So when I see a LinkedIn post or an email that has a lot of ellipses in it, so it's the extended dash,
And
that is a high indication that AI wrote that. But we don't have like 15 to 20 years for e-commerce to grow. AI is growing in a matter of like 3 to 5 years, and it will display. E-commerce didn't displace people's jobs because it just added some considerations and added jobs in the short term. AI will displace people, reskill people who take the steps. It's how are they optimizing their shopper-centric content to be seen by AI agents like Amazon Rufus, Walmart Sparky, ChatGPT on the outside, Gemini, Copilot, etc. Are they and then are they optimizing for both the shopper and AI agent or the GPT tools? AI in the next 5 to 10 years, knowing how fast it's iterating, will almost be able to mimic what the human orchestrator, the director, the head of PDP development, or whatever other area of the business we're talking about, could almost mirror it to the point that a human wouldn't notice the difference.
this is the Digital Shelf Insider podcast of MetricsCart. Almost a year ago on Digital Shelf Insider, we were asking a very different question. How is AI going to transform e-commerce? Back then, the conversation was full of momentum. Brands were experimenting, teams were scaling, and AI felt like the next big leap forward. But today, the tone has shifted. I recently came across a term called AIDR, basically artificial intelligence. Don't read. It reflects a growing fatigue around AI-generated content, imagery, and storytelling. In 2026, people aren't just impressed by what AI can create anymore. They're starting to question whether it feels real, whether it feels human. And that's happening at the same time when brands are desperately trying to scale with AI. So today's episode is all about dehyping AI in commerce. Not rejecting it, but understanding where automation helps, where it harms, and how brands can move forward without losing authenticity. We are joined by our favorite, Chris Perry, to talk about his Prompted series. For those of you who don't know, Chris, he is the CLO or the Chief Learning Officer at firstmovr and somebody who is at the forefront of proper commerce education. Let's get into it. Hi, Chris. Welcome back to Digital Shelf Insider podcast. So thrilled to have you here for the second time. And this time we're going to talk a lot about dehyping AI. I'm excited.
I'm so excited to be back. Thank you for having me back. If I didn't scare you away the first time, then I've done my job. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, you're like the guru from whom everybody learns e-commerce. So it's great to have you back. So I had a couple of questions. To begin with, like the last time we spoke, it was more like it was a year ago, and it was more in the angle of how AI is transforming e-commerce. It's very experimental in nature. Everybody was at the sort of beginning of a learning curve. And right now, 2026, one of our recent guests, Nurhan Madan, she shared that, 2026, we'll see less of AI talk. We, as humans, want proof of reality, of the human element, the real genuine connections. Do you agree with that sentiment? What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree, and I think by all means, every single change that has ever happened, large or small, first gets hyped because it's exciting and it's scary, and everybody needs to know about it. And obviously, those who are measured on getting attention from the new space are also incented to hype it up because that's how they get attention, right? We are what we do and we do what we measure, so that's the reality. But I do think it's been overhyped. Almost every discussion now is like, how do we like contextualize it? How do we frame it, right? And we try to do that ourselves. I know we were talking previously. We try to do that ourselves by breaking it up into, again, news and then capabilities and skills, right? So capabilities, the tools I can use, skills, what can I do with those tools? As well as then, what does this mean for my career? What does this mean for my team? What does this mean for my org, depending on what level of my thinking? So there's a lot to unpack. And so you have to dehype it, because what's starting to happen a little bit is we've heard AI so many times that it's becoming wallpaper to a degree. Because again, if I don't know enough about it, I get scared or I get nervous. And so I I don't want to say I check out, but I stop being, I'm desensitized, right?
Right.
And so there is like a little bit of an AI fatigue. And honestly, it's not because AI isn't amazing, but my point is like almost everyone and their brother has had this thing where it's like powered by AI. And you're like, well, how? And for what purpose? Just because you say that doesn't mean it works, or like you said, it's better, right? So, AI is an enhancement, and in some cases, can replace, right, some of the tasks and work, but it doesn't just saying powered by AI. That's a little bit of like a trust me, bro. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
work. It's great, right? And I do think leaders, shoppers, consumers, wherever they are in the journey, whatever hat they're wearing, we do care about human authenticity, right? And I think
Yeah.
I know you were very kind to share some questions that we could discuss today, but I mean, I think that's what people are looking for. And to be fair, I saw this really interesting image the other day, and I don't want to miscredit it, but it was like it was a crowd of people with lots of different colors of different color you know diversity of a population going through an
Yeah.
AI machine and becoming a grade
Oh
like
no.
same old population, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the challenge is that right now AI is being used by everyone as we learn it, but it's actually making us all a lot more alike than it is celebrating our diversity. And then you start noticing, you're like, well, hey, I'm reading that post on LinkedIn. That kind of looks like AI wrote that.
Yeah.
Or I saw that email and the way they phrased that, that's not them. That must
Yeah.
have been, they must, not because AI is bad, but it is a little, I think I heard somebody say AI theater, right?
Yeah.
We're putting on the show,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, you're kind of like, I want to see the real person behind the acting come through the acting, right? So I think that's at the end of the day, it's going to come back to trust and authenticity, even if AI helps augment that.
For sure. And I think 2025, we saw that this term AI slop just emerged. It was trending. And just last week, I read about this term called AIDR, replacing TLDR. So that's where things are. And with respect to PDPs, we see that, how AI is being used in PDPs. And what do you think, like, where do brands go wrong when they try to automate too much on their PDP with AI?
I, and again, I like I said, I know we're in an open sandbox right now. Everyone's testing things. Everyone's trying to set what are the boundaries, what are the limitations, what's the box we think outside of, where can I save costs, where can I save money? These are all normal iterations. So I don't fault anybody for this, but sometimes in that, like in the arms race, like we're in the race to go to the moon, we've kind of lost a little bit of the story of the
Oh, yeah.
of going to the moon, right? And so I think there's a lot of automation around, again, the content development, the content optimization, right? Or the enhanced, image
Yes.
enhancements, right? To make it to it obviously augment what you don't have time to do a photo shoot for, right?
Yes.
Taking stock imagery and improving it. Where that can go wrong, or even like I would say SEO/AIO or GEO optimizing the text, right? Like
Yeah.
all these things are good, but at the end of the day, it's almost kind of like where we've always talked about complete versus compelling PDPs.
Yes.
Before AI, you could still go through a checklist and say, do I have 6 carousel images? Yes. Do I have a title that is 100 characters? Yes. Is my main category keyword in that title and in my bullet points? I'm just very simplistic checklist, right?
Yeah.
You could check all that off and you'd say, I'm complete. And it was
Yes.
accurate information. It was it was good information. It was true. I mean, it was accurate to the brand. It was accurate for the shopper. Hopefully, it was consistent across your retailers and across your different hero SKUs or the items within your portfolio. However, then it was like, okay, so if everyone else can copy that
Yes.
checklist, what makes your page the one I'm going to buy from? What's the compelling story, right? And it's answering simple questions like, what is this product baseline? Who is it for? Target audience. You know, does it work for that audience? That's an important. What are the reasons to believe in additional benefits and other products you could complement a regimen with? I mean, why are we a credible brand to buy from as an in story? And again, technically, you could use AI to formulate content around those, but it still takes the human story writing to orchestrate that. And then also just to like go back to like, can I did I use AI? Like if I ask just to phone a friend, right? Does
Yeah.
this look does this look authentic, right? If it makes you tear up, like I always laugh, I always say, when I watched The Notebook many years ago with my wife, I literally bawled at the end. I was just crying, like such happy, sad movie, but like you can't AI, I don't think it, at least as of today, couldn't fully replicate the
That level of
authenticity of watching that
emotions.
entire story through and feeling the characters and feeling sad at the end, but in a
Yeah.
happy way because the characters, I won't ruin the movie for anybody if they haven't seen it, but it's but that part's kind of missing. And so the problem is compelling was hard to do without AI and it was just all humans. If
Right.
you add AI and you're like, oops, I got all this stuff done. I've checked all the lists. I'm even better. You still didn't actually practice adding the human part back in. So you can use AI for that more compelling essence of the brand or the product, but the human still has to be there to like almost human check it to make sure it's
Right.
really coming through. That emotion is coming through.
Right, right. I completely agree with you. I like the point that you mentioned about compelling versus complete, and it takes me back to a time when I used to attend a couple of your first mover events, and you used to share the PDP essentials, and you just spoke right there the same thing. Like that's the essential part, and we need to make it compelling. Uh, Probably my thoughts around this would be like, uh, we need to AI optimize it from the way the consumer searches also, right? Like they might be asking LLM specific questions at the moment. So maybe our PDP should involve that kind of natural language in there.
Oh, for sure. And but
Yeah.
once again, it's like, and again, I have no doubt AI in the next 5 to 10 years, knowing how fast it's iterating, will almost be able to mimic what the
Right.
human
Sure.
orchestrator, the director, the head of PDP development, or whatever other area of the business we're talking about, could almost mirror it to the point that a human wouldn't notice the difference. But there is something that I mean, we can argue this all day long, but there's a
Yeah.
reason they're humans and there's a reason there's AI, right?
Yes. Yes.
But I think the best, again, as we always try to say too, is it's not against AI, it's
Yeah.
pro-human with AI, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Human plus AI equals 3, right? It should. So if the human is thinking, this is my story, and I want to use AI to help me augment that story, but I'm still the one gut checking that it flows and it really tells
Yes.
the meaning, the human
Yes.
meaning behind it, then you're going to have an AI augmented emotional expression and essence to the product or the brand. So I mean, I think it's an and opportunity, but I think there are some people who are just being pressured to like get the cost savings out of it, get the efficiencies out of this, test it, learn it, know it, and you're like, yes, but then if you spend all your time doing that, you're not practicing the compelling piece
So
yet. And you may not have the chops to do it later because you haven't practiced it now. So that's but it's simple things, right? Again, as a shopper, I look at a page and I think, what is this? Yes,
yeah.
in milliseconds, right? What
Yes.
is this? Is this for me? Oh, it looks like it is. Does it work for the thing my audience wants from it? It looks like it. It's the number one product. It's recommended by X, right? It's got 5-star reviews. And then, well, why else would I pick this one over other products like this one? Oh, it's got this and it's sustainable and it doubles as another product and it like, and oh, by the way, they have a whole rest of the portfolio and 50 years of heritage, right? See, even in like 5 milliseconds, I've got the story and it sells me very quickly on
Yeah.
adding to cart.
Yeah. Everything ties up together.
It does.
Yeah. And another question I had for you, Chris, is that what are the potential ethical considerations of AI in generating product images or kind of modifying them? Like, is there a line between creative enhancement and misleading misrepresentation that brands should be cautious about?
Definitely. And it is a gray area because, again,
Yeah.
and I know that there was some early issues too around some of the image generation tools where it was, again, it was basing, like, while I'm prompting an image out of nothing, it was basing its knowledge of what to design. So if I said, create me an image of a cat jumping off of a sofa or a couch onto the living room floor, yes, it had some elements of that in its own learning model, but it might have also been pulling from other copyright content, right? So that's
Mm.
one thing you always have to be careful of, like as an early issue, that it was drawing from trademarked or copyright or owned images, or content out there, as kind of a benchmark to then design your prompted image. But the other thing I would say is a lot of AI is being used to clean up images, obviously to help add, add a color overlay, to
Yeah.
lighten it up, to remove the background, or just isolate that character, or blur out the background. I mean, I'm not a graphic designer, but I'm dangerous in it. But like, my point is, there's a lot of cool things that AI can do to like enhance the imagery you had AI create, or had that you pulled as stock photos, or that you did a photo shoot on. I think that makes sense. I mean, like, I mean, always enhance where you can. That's why we have filters on our iPhones and our, Androids, where we can improve a photo that we took to make it look like we're an amazing photographer. I think where it gets tricky though is when that imagery is being AI is being used to enhance imagery that is communicating a benefit or a result. So when we think of like before and after images, or like hey, you know, relieves all pain symptoms. I'm just making
Yeah.
this up as like an OTC product. And then you're picturing someone, you know, you have to be careful that you're not lying to the consumer, even unintentionally, right? And actually, even on traditional TV copy, or or video ads, a lot of times when they're showing something that is obviously a dramatization, they have
Yes.
to put dramatization. When I see that, sometimes I'm like, really, come on, like people don't know that, it's almost like with toys where they say, where they'll have the disclaimer like, toys do not actually talk, and you're like, really, you thought you were buying a toy where the toy was alive, that they're like, but
Yeah.
I realize they have to do that because some people literally would say it doesn't do the thing it said it was going to do. So I think
Yeah.
that seems so simple, but there is a fine
Fine line.
and sometimes gray line between enhancing imagery for the output or the outcome or the result. So I think if it's the way I'd say is, if you're enhancing the clarity of something, I think
Yeah.
that's fine. If you're enhancing the performance of something, or the implied performance of your product, that's where it gets dangerous, because even if you meant well, someone could buy the product thinking it cures cancer when it actually doesn't cure cancer, right?
Yeah.
It was just a candy, right? That was supposed to taste good, right? So, and I know most of us would say, "Oh no, I would never do." I'm not saying you would mean to do that. It just could happen as you were automating some of these processes and maybe not overseeing the
Yeah.
output, right? So it's the same thing when you have something written, right, where you're like, "Hey, you know what? This looks generally good in the first 3 lines. I didn't read the last 3 paragraphs and realize that it went, it went, it went
Yeah.
astray, and it needs to be
Yes.
brought back in, right?" So that's why you always want to fine tune everything with the human eye, just to make sure. And again, I always like to say phone a friend, because you might be too close to it. So if I was doing something, I might say, "Hey, can you take a look?" And just make sure I'm not. And you might say, "There's no way this product does this. This is a dramatization, right?" So you
Makes
you
sense.
may want to ultimately disclose something like that.
All right, before we get back into the conversation, I just want to take a moment to talk about something that can really elevate the way you manage your e commerce channels. If you're in the consumer goods or durable space, listen up. You already know that staying ahead in the digital marketplace is crucial, whether you're a retailer, brand, or agency. But how do you get the most accurate insights in real time? How do you keep track of competitor price activity, consumer trends, and constant changes in product visibility? That's where MetricsCart comes in. MetricsCart is a marketplace intelligence platform designed specifically for e-commerce teams like yours. It gives you a holistic, data-driven view of your performance across all digital shelves. Whether it's price monitoring, competitive analysis, or understanding trends before they become a wave, MetricsCart has you covered. I've seen firsthand how this kind of intelligence takes brands from just surviving to thriving. If you're managing products in the consumer goods or durable space, it's a game changer. Check them out, and I promise you, your e commerce game won't be the same. Now, let's get back to the show. Yeah. So, are you saying that AI transparency should be out there for consumers to see when it's just not about enhancement in the PDP, but it goes a level above, like a before and after, like you shared?
Yeah, yeah. I think the disclosure is important when it is a dramatization. When it is,
Yeah.
if you take this vitamin, you'll be a superhero. Well, obviously, you may feel like one. You're not going to become a Marvel Avenger, like, just because you took a multivitamin. So, and that seems so simple. But if you were to show that, you might put dramatization, or some disclaimer in there, not to then negate your claim, but just to draw it back to reality.
Yeah.
I don't think if you're just enhancing basic imagery, you know, where it is it showing a different performance, right? If we said if it's about clarity, I don't think you have to say AI improved the lighting and the imagery.
Makes
Nobody
sense.
cares about that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit like most people don't care about how the sausage is made as long as it tastes good and arguably is also healthy for you. And it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
If the imagery is or the content is communicating something where misunderstanding that could hurt me, I do want to know how the sausage is made and that it was made in this way and I should read it differently or take it in differently. So I do think, but I mean, I think about like, I mean, we already as consumers are already very predisposed to like sponsored paid search
Yeah.
call outs or,
Yeah.
ad under a display ad where we know it's not a merchandising unit from the retailer. It is an advertisement that was paid. Um, I know this isn't advertising per se, but I mean, I think that same kind of transparency just gives me the option and at least I don't want to say gets the brand or the retailer out of trouble, but allows them to separate themselves from a misunderstanding when you're like, it was very clearly labeled that you weren't going to become a superhero. Um, okay. Yeah, I'm using that as a silly example, but I think we have to be careful. And to be honest, if you just want to be safe as a brand, I mean, you should probably put that on there wherever that is a gray area. Otherwise, though, if you're just enhancing an image and you remove the background people, you don't have to say other people used to be in the shot. That doesn't matter. Like, that's nobody cares. They just care that you communicated the message of the story.
Absolutely. I have a few questions around CPG marketing and how AI is being used. So, and CPG marketing has always been about memory, emotions, and creating that habit of repeat purchases. And AI excels at variation, testing, and optimization. So, and that makes things a little bit generic. So, are those two philosophies quietly in conflict?
No, I mean, I think it's a very interesting question. I think everybody should hope for consistency, and that's at a couple levels. As human leaders, when we think of just, I know we're using PDPs as an example, right? There are some nuances when you have you know, one SKU sold at 5 different retailers, there are gonna be some differences in how that story translates because each of the 5 retailers has slightly different capabilities, right? So some have more than others, some are very limited, and so your story could come across very differently or inconsistently, not because of your brand ability, but because of the retailer's ability. So there's always gonna be some challenge there. But if it is the same SKU, it's not that you wouldn't say, I'm gonna use, US examples, like a Walmart customer or shopper might be a little different than the Target guest
Yeah.
profile versus the Costco member profile.
Yeah.
But and that would be true in any market, right? There might be some unique differences, and you might want to talk to somebody who's a slightly higher, more affluent shopper versus a lower income shopper who's looking for this is the reason I buy this, but for this person, it's a different reason, right? So there may be some differences, just like with media, that you would talk to different groups differently, but consistency is still the key because at the end of the day, like what the product is, what ingredients are inside, what major features and benefits it has are going to be the same. The fact that it's from a brand that has 50 to 100 years of hair. I mean, there are going to be some common messages that need to be consistent. So we always talk about consistency being really important. Um, that isn't to say, though, that you aren't human and that you aren't expressing yourself and adding emotion. And again, for a lower income shopper that just needs the product for its basic need, but because it's a higher quality product, it's going to deliver and it won't break on you in the short term versus somebody who might have a little more money who's buying it for how it looks to them, right? Or how,
Right.
I'm just making up an example, but like, but see right there, like you'd have like the baseline pieces would be consistent, and that would be where you'd want to direct AI to like these are non-negotiables. Always have these in there, but almost like if you're briefing for this media campaign, I would brief for this audience differently because they have different wants, needs, motivators, demographics, psychographics, sociographics. But for this audience with the same product, I'm communicating something a little different, right? So
Right.
I think we have to do the same thing. And again, it's very much in line with kind of prompt design. It's garbage in, garbage out, quality in,
Yeah.
quality out. Quality also means consistency where it needs to be true and differentiation where it also should be true. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, but I think if we just kind of run in and just automate everything, you win with this algorithm, so to speak, but you lose the shopper behind it, right? Or the shoppers behind it, because it's going to be different. It's going to be inconsistently consistent by nature of who you're trying to talk to.
Right. Absolutely, Chris. You've been doing the NCAP award series for over a year now. And what are the AI signs that you see or you have observed in PDPs when you did the award series? Like, what's the clearest sign that a page was optimized for system instead of shoppers? Like, you could remember.
Yeah, I no, I think there's a couple things, and to be fair, I think most of us, if you pay it close enough attention, by all means, I am guilty of this myself. So because I'm testing with AI, too, not to replace all my work, but to enhance my work, right? I'm trying to practice what I preach. But I'll give you an example. So when when I see a LinkedIn post or an email that has a lot of ellipses in it, so it's the extended dash.
And dash.
That is yeah, that is a high indication that AI wrote that. Not because now my wife is an English teacher, my mom was an English teacher, so I actually learned how to use those. But I don't use them naturally as much as they might do it
Yeah.
with me, but definitely more than Chat GPT. Almost everything, every line has this this ellipse, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like that's not how. Like when if I copied that, I'd be embarrassed, even though I bet you 90% of my audience wouldn't immediately go, "Oh, he wrote that with AI," right?
Yeah.
Or it's the way. To be fair, it's doing it as you were saying, like TLDR, AIDR, right? Like it's doing it in this very like simple breakdown. So when I'll say like, "Hey, this is my message. How would you write this as a LinkedIn post?" Just to see how it would write. It simplifies it a lot to make it
Yeah.
really easy to read. But then I see other people's posts, and that's my point about the diversity going into the machine and coming out.
Yeah.
It was apples, oranges, and bananas, and now we're just all apples, right? Everyone's looks the same, even though they're all saying something different. So when I see it, I'm like, it's longer than a normal post would be because most people don't write that long, but then because it's broken up in a really thoughtful way, you're like, well, I mean, this makes sense. Let me copy and paste it in. So it's not bad, like obviously in our daily use, but it starts to become obvious that it feels like an apple to an apple versus, ooh, this apple's different than this orange, and I wanted a great fruit today, but
Yeah.
which one is compelling to me right now? So I have seen that a little bit in content. Obviously, there's some level, and these are tools that are out there today that can help you AIO, SEO, optimize your bullets and your descriptions. To be fair, that was also, I want to say, dehumanizing some of the content too,
Yeah.
because before it was AI driven, right? It was more of a, let's make sure the right keywords and phrases are in our content. That's still important for AI, but I think the AI part formats it a little differently. So before, if you were just SEO optimizing your bullet points, you already had the bullet points the way, structured the way Walmart.com or Tesco or Flipkart or Amazon would allow you to put them in, right? So you were limited that way, and it was just a matter of how do I weave the keywords in and phrases so that it sounds human, but maybe is also a story, but includes them in there. Now, like AI doesn't necessarily rewrite the bullet point structure, but if you're doing descriptions or like the content in the imagery, sometimes is almost like when you read it, you're like, that sounds kind of like AI did that.
No.
It's because it's short content, it's not as noticeable, and I haven't been as concerned by it yet. I think the big issue more for like in the end caps where we're seeing is we haven't added this as a formal pillar of like how we score, but we are looking at it, brands that do this well. It's how are they optimizing their shopper-centric content to be seen by AI agents like Amazon Rufus, Walmart Sparky, Chat GPT on the outside, Gemini, Copilot, etc. Are they and then are they optimizing for both the shopper and AI agent or the GPT tool? So I haven't seen it, thankfully, so operationalized that you're like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
AI content and not human content, but it's more of how do we make sure the human content is read by the AI agent without losing the human touch. There are a couple, one other thing you've probably seen too. There are a couple, even as I've shopped as my own shopper, sample size of one, I've seen some third-party brands that had some pretty ridiculous carousel images that very much looked like AI. I don't want to say they had like a six finger on them, but it was just
Oh yeah.
like it's where like they where it was clearly like a stock photo, and it was like put my product in their hands, but then the product isn't the right dimension or size. I've seen people hack like just graphic design manually anyway, do that as well. But AI can suddenly make me holding the item that's yours, but it doesn't have to be holding it in the way you'd actually hold the product or use the product. So I've seen a few of those. I haven't seen the big national brands do that or global brands do that a whole lot yet. But if you see one out there, I'd love you to send it to me so we can laugh together, because it
Yeah.
we need to call it out before it gets too normalized, and then and then we do it the wrong way, right? I want you to normalize the correct path, not the lesser path, if you will.
Makes so much of sense. Now, I want to talk about the prompted series that you are up to. It's so purely educational. I mean, we were discussing just before we started recording. I love the structure in it, the way you're trying to teach that, how AI is being used across commerce, entertainment, hardware for productivity. That gives a lot of clarity for the space right now. And my question for you is like, in a world where every brand claims to be AI powered, was prompted sort of a response to too much automation and too little thinking?
Definitely that. And I also, and this isn't to sound like unusually altruistic or better than anyone else. I go back to a common thing we say in our trainings and in our events, like we are what we do and we do what we measure, right? So, and that's important comment in general. So, and we always would say, so if you want to do omni-channel, you need to measure omni-channel. If you want to do AI, you need to measure AI. Obviously, that trickles down into more specifics, right? But at a high level, we are incentivized by what measurement model we're in, right? CPG companies, retailers are measured by certain things as public companies and private companies. That trickles down to us as individual leaders in an organization. You're measured by certain things. I'm measured by certain things. Sometimes those things are good. Sometimes they're not good, or they can lead us to lesser outcomes. So, like an example that always sticks in my head with this just concept, and then we can tie it to prompted, because I think this is important, whether you engage in our prompted content or not. When Domino's Pizza originally had like the 30-minute delivery or it's free, that measurement caused a problem, and it wasn't Domino's fault. Like I don't think they didn't know this could happen, right? But
Yeah.
what does that now incentivize the driver to do that brings you the pizza?
Yeah.
Go as fast as they can, right? And what does that now pose? Safety concerns on the road. So there were all kinds of reported incidents of like delivery drivers from pizza delivery companies in the early days, even before e-commerce, where they were trying to make sure that they got it to you in time so that it wasn't free or it wasn't discounted, but that meant they were speeding or they might have been reckless driving, right? So the point is you almost had to have a counter metric in there where it was assuming the driver is allowed to get to you at the speed limit, the legal speed limit, and that can be done in 30 minutes, then it's, you know, then it's not, it's full price. If they were just late because we were late making your pizza or whatever, then you get it free. I know that would have been harder to measure back in, the 80s or, 70s, 80s, early 90s, but like
Yeah.
the reality is we are what we do and we do what we measure. So the reason I say this is for prompted, no one no one in our industry is really allowed to talk about the really in terms of the human impact part. Now, when I say that, you might say, well, I've heard some people. Yes, the big four consulting companies can say, up to 70% of work will be impacted by AI and 30% will be replaced. And they can say these big, broad, sweeping numbers, right?
Yeah.
But, and then there are obviously kind of the dramatic doomsday people that say, everybody's doomed. We're all going to lose our jobs.
Yeah.
But usually they're not in a large CPG or in a retailer. So the big CPGs and the retailers, they're not really allowed to say, hey, everyone, we might lay off like 20% of the people in the next 2 years, unless it's coming right now and they have to say we are laying off. I know there have been some recent layoffs at major companies. So when they are doing it, they tell you. They're not going to say, hey, in the future, we may be doing this, so you need to prep in advance. So they can't give you that public service announcement because it looks bad
Yeah.
in the short term. The solution providers and the data companies, they obviously are incented to say, hey, big companies who pay our bills, we are powered by AI. So we're not going to tell everybody that you might not be here to use our tool anymore if you don't learn these things. They're just trying to be the most valuable and relevant that they can be individually. So it left kind of this message around a little bit of the what Oscar and I at First Mover as fellow practitioners in this space. It was a little bit of that early e-commerce message. It's like, this is changing everything about how you go to market. We were a little early. We were first movers. So maybe we were the boys who cried wolf way too early, but we did, and it did happen. But we don't have like 15 to 20 years for e-commerce to grow. AI is growing in a matter of like 3 to 5 years, and like e-commerce didn't displace people's jobs because it just added some considerations and added jobs in the short term. AI will displace people, reskill people who take the step, cause people to go fractional, who might not have been used to being outside of a company, but have to be a fractional leader and be more of an entrepreneur. Obviously, people that just have to transition out of the industry because they don't reskill. These are real things. So it's like that career book series from it's still I think still a popular one today. Is that What Color Is Your Parachute? It's, do I know what my plan B would be if I got impacted? But I don't like I like the book. I've read it before, but it's not just what color is your parachute, it's what color is your jetpack, right? Because I don't want you to fall, I want you to fly. But to fly, you have to learn something different. So this isn't to be fluffy at that high level, like stuff. We get into, here are real use cases for how you can use publicly available tools. Here are the capabilities out there from solution providers that can help you and your process, right? We try to get really tangible, but the first and foremost message is again, who is this for? All of us.
Yeah.
What's happening to us? This.
Yeah.
The odds of you winning displacement are much, much greater than winning the lottery. So if you don't act, right? So that's the point. So if you get on Noah's Ark, you're going to be okay. But if you don't get on Noah's Ark, and it is a famous cartoon where there's two dinosaurs on an island and Noah's Ark is sailing away, and they're like, that was today? I don't want that to be you, where you're blindsided because you don't break down the AI into the less hyped news, tools, skills, process, right? And we don't have, again, we're just one of many voices out there trying to educate on this, but we felt there was a missing voice on this really could happen to you.
Yeah.
It's, when it happens to you, you go through a grief curve. I mean, like, I've been displaced before. That wasn't based on performance. What we were doing wasn't a priority for the organization, and we were displaced. That was fine, except that really hurt your ego. That hurt your confidence, and everybody had to go through a grief curve personally. But the problem is that grief curve might limit your time to bounce back if you're not already ready. Like, hey, I could get displaced. I've already prepped for it. This company was short-sighted. They laid off our team. Fine. I can go back and get this job somewhere else because I have the 1 + 1 = 3. And so I just have a lot of passion, if you can't tell, for that, because I don't want anybody left behind. That's like goes back like to the root of being a kid, was always about having people's backs. You don't have to want me to have your back, but I do. Yeah. So like you might choose someone else to be your BFF, but you've got an extra pair of hands when you're like, this bully's picking on me. Help me out, Chris. I'm a vigilante. I'm ready to help, right? I'd like to be an Avenger, right? So, but Oscar and I have a lot of passion about that. What does this really mean for the individuals? What are your 5 different paths, depending on your choices? We hope your choice is that you want to stay in the game. Here's how you stay in the game. And again, but here's the human part of like, this is hard. It is different. It's uncomfortable. It's unsettling, but here's what you can do to make that a little less so. And you can do it. We're here to empower you. So I hope anybody out there listening gets empowered by that, because we were all first movers in some form of digital or e-commerce. We need to do it again, but this time, not just for our companies, but for ourselves. Because I don't want you to be on the couch going, I don't know what to do next, right? Like, you've already practiced AI in 15 different ways. You get how it works, and you know how to ask the right questions to be that orchestrator so that AI just augments what you do.
For sure. And this is really valuable, Chris. I mean, to even understand what grief curve is quite critical at the time that we are in. I just want to understand, like, what would be some top 3, takeaways you would have for folks, especially people, with the whole transition that's happening with AI in the industry?
So, and some of these are going to be simple, like I would say, but I know we have a group of audience members out there and listeners who are on the spectrum of where they are maturity wise with AI. Because again, with every area of change, right, like, I always think of like when the new iPhone launches, I always use this example. There are some people who want to have it first, and they will sleep outside of the Apple store to get it first, even though they were in the cold for no reason. They could have waited one more day and still gotten it. And I don't think anyone would have thought, oh, you weren't the first to unbox the product. But for them, it mattered, right? It was part of their identity. That's fine. There's really early movers, there's first movers, there's I would say early adopters, there's late adopters for every type of change. But the reality is you need to start dabbling in AI and recognize, and Oscar always mentions this too, it's important. Most people at work have either internally, they have, I don't want to say a dumbed down version of AI, but they have a safe version of AI.
A freemium, maybe.
A freemium version, because also the companies are still wary of like how private and confidential the information that's shared on AI is. So that's gonna evolve quickly. But the safe version at work and the free version you have access to at home are usually several iterations behind the latest and greatest capabilities. So a lot of the masses of people aren't actually seeing the full potential of the tool today, let alone that it gets updated next week and is even better, right? So Oscar's done some really great things in the past where he's just pulled like, when I gave a prompt here, like in 2023, this is what I got. And 2 months later, I did this, and this is what I got. And just showing how like amazing it became. I think there's some video online about how it was like asking for the actor Will Smith to eat spaghetti. And it was a matter of like months where it went from like, he was like deformed, and it was kind of disturbing to watch, to like, it literally looks like Will Smith movie. It's like, it's amazing, right? So the speed of improvement increases so fast that it's really worth trying like the paid chat GPT or like the paid version. Not I don't make any referrals on any of those. I think it's good to test the better version and then practice it with real use cases, not just, hey, write me an email or summarize this. I mean, those are good step zero, steps to get your feet wet. But I would say one thing that I found very valuable personally, and I don't know, Shrestha, if you're familiar with the 6 Types of Working Genius personality type by Patrick Lencioni. His group is famous for like the 5 types of dysfunctional teams. They do a lot of leadership and team and or enhancement training and content. But one of my favorite pieces from them is the 6 Types of Working Genius. And there's a book and then a personality test. And Oscar and I've had our whole team take this. I've had my wife, he's had his wife take this. We like my brother was the one that got me into checking this out. He had our family's company, like literally 200 people in the company, take this and then reorg around their working geniuses, because there's 6 competencies. 2 are your strengths, 2 are your competencies, but they don't fuel you, and 2 are your frustrations. So the reason I bring this up is I use AI to bridge me on the parts, my frustrations, and to augment my geniuses, my refuel competencies, right? So I'm an invention discernment person. So I love coming up with ideas. People say, Chris, you're crazy. You're like A Beautiful Mind, the movie. Not that I always have the best ideas, but I can think that fast. But I can overwhelm people really fast. Like really quickly, I can overwhelm people who aren't ready for that many ideas or that kind of energy, as you can see. So I use ChatGPT to be the endless ideator with me and the discerner, so that I already came with, hey, I had 100 ideas. I discerned them down to 50. And then ChatGPT helped me discern it down to 4. So you only have to look at the 4.
But what do you feel? Is it behind you, or is it ahead of you, or is it with you?
I want to say AI is always ahead of me, because literally it's changing in real time. But I'd like to say I'm like one step behind the day-to-day use of it. Now, Oscar, I always give him credit, is like 50 feet to 50,000 miles ahead, because he's a wonder person. And so he's already there. Well, what if this was the future application of this? And let me try to hack and build an application that, like, he's amazing that way. And that's why we partner really well. But I would say I keep pace with it, but I've also had to practice a little bit of like, hey, one of my frustrations is tenacity, which is one of the things, which is like the time management, project management part. I'm not a project manager, even though I do them all the time. It's not my favorite part, is the minutia of that. But I use it to create my timelines, to create my, like almost the Gantt charts, like so that I'm on, and that way I always over deliver, but I don't have to worry about being drained
Yeah.
so that I can't over deliver, I'm helping it augment my frustration. So I say that too, is like, as a person dabbling in using the internal tools for internal asks, outside tools for things that are public facing or that are personal, really just getting that fluency of quality in, quality out helps you start being a better orchestrator. And then obviously then thinking about, well, okay, where are my strengths and where can I have this augment my strengths?
Yeah.
And then where are my weaknesses and where can this bridge me where it's going to be a detractor for me if I don't get some help. And then it becomes like a little mini AI employee that can be the other part of the working genius, right? Because by nature of only having two geniuses out of six, you'd almost have to have at least three people to have all six geniuses paired together. So but I mean, we can get more specific. You have examples in that you're thinking of, but I start with that because at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable saying, I use this to plan my whole vacation,
Yeah.
down to the minute. I could
Yeah.
use that same type of thinking to plan my next campaign, right? I just have to know what the right questions and inputs are.
For sure, for sure. I completely agree with you. We've come to the end of the episode, Chris. It was wonderful chatting with you about dehyping AI, learning about how brands need to draw a line when it comes to using in PDPs, enhancing them rather than, kind of, boosting the performance using AI. So, very wonderful takeaways, and I'm sure our audience are also going to enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me again. I look forward to seeing you have so many awesome guests and discussions. I love them and I look forward to the rest of the series this year.
Thank you, Chris.